How's it going, everybody? I have another special video where it's another Q&A with GrahamGSMMatthews. As before, I'm going to ask him some questions just to get an outsider's point of view on mental topics, and then I also have some specialty questions for him to answer as far as it comes to his fortes, as it were. With wrestling. But question number one, Graham, is thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me once again. Most highly anticipated return in the history of the Jason Davis channel.
Exactly. Do you think that suicide is a cowardly thing to do?
I think it's definitely all about perception, because I've heard both sides of the coin there, with it being a cowardly way out, but it takes a lot of courage to go through something like that, and it absolutely is. I think I'm in the camp that would say that it's, I think, more courageous than it is cowardly. I think it kind of depends on who you talk to and who's, people's. It's like abortion, like everyone has a different opinion on it for the most part. But I would say not to recommend suicide or anything like that, but just to say, not that I'm condoning it. But I do think that if it was cowardly, I feel like cowardly, the connotation that often goes with the word cowardly is that it's easy. Suicide is not, some people might see it as the easy way out of life or whatever, but to actually go through with it is probably one of the most courageous things you can actually do, depending on your definition of the word courageous, but it takes a lot to do that.
Right. Do you think certain situations it's understandable compared to, like, say, if somebody's has a terminal illness? Do you think that's more understanding than, say, somebody who's just dealing with depression and feels that there's no way out?
Yeah, I think there's different cases for everybody. I think it's hard to say to, like, kind of stereotype everybody who commits suicide, and it depends on really all their situation. I would say for specific people, like you said, if they're dealing with a mental illness or just an illness period that they can't really escape, and it makes life a lot harder for them. I think, not to say that it's justifiable, but I could definitely see that more so than someone who's just going through like a shitty life or something like that, based off their own choices, saying that if they fucked themselves over, they cheated on their girlfriend or their wife or something, they ended up in the spot that they are. They're only ones to blame. But I mean, if you're born with like an illness or something, or if you get an illness, that's not something that's really your fault. But even then, though, I would say that. Wait, what was your question again? I'm sorry, kind of off track a little bit.
Do you think someone who's terminally ill it's more justifiable and more right if they choose to take their own life compared to someone who's just dealing with depression and feels that there's no way out?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, again, it kind of goes back to the discussion that I would say, from what I've seen anyway, I would see people that would, not personally, but I would just in general situations, say someone commits suicide. Some people say that as a cowardly, selfish act, because they don't really see how it affects other people around them, but those people around them, no matter how much they care about that person, are not the ones who have to go through the life that person lives every day.
Right.
So at the end of the day, they're the ones that are living that life, not the people that care about them and whatever. So maybe I think it might be selfish for them to think that the person doing it is selfish. It's kind of it's a two-way street, but I definitely think it is more justifiable, as you said.
Right. I mean, like, when I attempted to take my life when I was 14, felt there was no way out. Glad my neck didn't break when I hung myself. But I mean, looking back now, I can sit there and say, like, I'm glad I didn't do it, because I would have never experienced anything I have so far up in my life, and everything's a lesson. And you know, compared to what you know now, compared to 10 years ago, you're such a different person.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, I probably would agree with, I think if you have a terminal illness and you're just in pain and you're going to go anyways, why not go out on your own time? But if you're depressed enough, like, where you feel that there's no answers, you should always try to find help. There's always always help out there. There's always somebody ready to listen. What is your opinion on working with somebody with clinical depression, OCD, social anxiety disorder, and or Tourette's?
I'm trying to think if I work with anyone who deals with that kind of stuff. That's a good question. I don't know. Like I said, I think we kind of touched upon this in our previous video. I think it's all about a matter of understanding, whether you've been through that stuff or not. I mean, I've personally never been through probably most of those things. I mean, I don't, not to say that I'm OCD, but I do like things to be like neat and shit like that. But I think people just need to be more open and understanding of people's situations. Not to speak for everybody, but my own self here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, regardless of what people are going through, what they have wrong with them, or whatever the issue is, you can't. I mean, I think it's our natural instinct to judge people. But I think you have to judge people as less as possible for what they go through. I mean, it's their own issues, and you have to put yourself in their shoes. I feel like it's just the most important lesson. You have to feel like what they're going through. You just have to understand their perspective, their point of view. But yeah, I mean, and just working with like someone like you and whatever. Like I said in my previous video, I didn't know that you went through probably 99% of the stuff that you do until I've known you since last year, but since last June, but probably since I started working there again in January. So maybe 6 or 7 months that I did not know that. But yeah, I mean, I think people just need to be more open. If they do work with someone that has depression or OCD or anything along those lines, they just need to be more open and not even not judge people, but try to help them as much as possible.
Nice. Do you think that it's a stereotype that all depressed people want to die, as far as, you see it in social media and movies and stuff like that?
It is kind of a stereotype, I'd say. I would say, like,
if Bob's depressed, then he obviously probably wants to die.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a good way of putting it, just through, like, the media's eyes and stuff like that. I would say even just more generally, I feel like the word depression automatically has a connotation to the word suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as we were talking before, not to give you the whole story here for the next 20, 30 minutes, but I felt like there was a time in my life, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and I don't like to use the word depressed because I was never really on the verge, on the brink of suicide or anything like that, but I feel like to an extent where I was in my life at that time, I might have been considered maybe not clinically depressed, but I feel like part of me was depressed, and maybe my own definition of the word. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean I was suicidal. So, I mean, yeah, I definitely think, and especially like movies and shows like that, where you hear, like, oh yeah, like you said, he's depressed. We better watch out because he's going to kill himself. I feel like that's not always the case. I mean, depression and suicide are not immensely different things, but that doesn't necessarily that one leads to the other.
Right. Not a gateway.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Do you think that families should be held responsible for a family member who is battling with disorders if treatment in a, say, medical facility fails?
That's a really good question. So, like, if a person with, like, a mental illness or something along those lines is dealing with something and the hospital can't help them, is that what you're saying? Like, should the family be responsible? That's a great question. I don't know. I don't know if the entire burden should be put on the family. I mean, I feel like if there's anyone that should help that person, if the hospital can't, if doctors can't, it should be the family.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, I guess it really all depends on the situation, but, oh, man. I mean, it's really hard to say. I mean, I would say that if the doctors can't help that person, and if that person ends up doing something to take their own life or hinder their own life, hurt themselves, whatever, the blame should not be put on the family. I feel like there's really no one to blame at that point. It just happens. I mean, I hate to say that just to accept it, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's necessarily the family's fault, but I would say that if a situation does come up where the doctors can't help and hospitals can't help, I feel like the family should try to help as much as possible. Not that they're morally obligated to, but I would say that they should probably, if there's anyone to help those kind of people, it would be them and close friends and stuff like that.
Gotcha. Have you ever known anybody who's been in a facility or psych ward in the hospital or anything like that?
I don't think so. I'm trying to think of anyone that I know that has been through a psych ward. I don't think so. Maybe not personally. Maybe through like.
Besides me, yeah.
Besides like people that I know through other people, but
yeah.
No, I don't think so. No.
Okay. Do you have an opinion on the link between? Do you think there's enough awareness in school? Say you're in college.
Mm-hmm.
Say in college, do you think there's enough awareness for, like, suicide hotlines or therapy or anything like that? Do you see that at all in school, or?
Honestly, no, I don't. I feel like it only gets to that point where, like,
so you think enough pressure from dealing with homework and classes, getting stuff done. I would think that would be
You would think there'd be more of a presence of that kind of
Yeah.
thing, of like more assistance and more like awareness. I think is the perfect word, as you mentioned, of that kind of stuff. But honestly, no. I mean, we get classes all the time, not necessarily in college. It's more prominent at like a high school or middle school level of like cyberbullying and stuff. Very different than depression or stuff like that. But our hotlines and stuff like that.
cyberbullying. Yeah, I mean, well, that's relatively kind of new in the last couple of years.
Yeah. No. So I mean, that wasn't really. I didn't really see much of that in like middle school. That was like I was in middle school like 10 years ago, so they didn't really have much of that then. But I think there should be more awareness. I feel like they teach. I think a perfect example. I mean, there's such a huge emphasis on like drinking and driving, as there should be. Obviously, that's important. That ends and kills people. Obviously, that ends lives. But I feel like there should be an equally amount of emphasis on like depression. Like I, for one, don't drink or do any of that kind of stuff, so that would never really affect me. But I feel like anyone could go through something like that, like depression or a hotline or a suicide hotline or people that kind of stuff applies to everybody. Not even necessarily to you, but maybe someone that you know.
Mhm.
So it's a lot more prominent, I would think. But you don't really see enough of a presence of it, like a strong enough presence of it in schools. That from what I've seen, maybe it's different in other towns or states or something like that. But there should be though.
Definitely. I appreciate the answering my mental questions.
Of course, always happy to help.
If you guys have any questions, please feel free to send them in. I had gotten a PM, and I want to say her name was Sonia, but these were the questions I thought you could ask me, that she asked me, and I feel bad because I accidentally erased her name, but I wrote them down.
See, starting from Sonia, if that's how you pronounce your name, my apologies if
Yeah.
I botched that. Do people with tics enjoy ticking?
Enjoy ticking. When they're the tick attacks, they can be painful. The normal ticks of just kind of moving or whatever is to me is annoying. So I don't enjoy it. I mean, sometimes there's parts where it has to happen. So if I don't do it, it's a release. If that makes sense. It's kind of like holding in. Me personally, no. I don't enjoy ticking because it's awkward and I don't like the looks and stuff. And I know I should just be myself and don't care what anybody thinks. But it's hard when you constantly have to work around customers or you're out in public and you move a lot. So enjoy, I would say no.
You don't consider it a pastime or anything like that?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Next question from Sonia. Do you consider yourself disabled because of Tourette Syndrome?
Disabled maybe socially, just because it's harder than to try to hold a conversation unless I'm really comfortable with the person. Disabled maybe socially. I wouldn't say physically. I mean, it happens, but I can still use my arms or my shoulders or neck. So I mean, I'm not. I would say no. Maybe socially.
Yeah, I can see how that applies.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think disabled is a pretty broad term, but to say to break it down and say socially as opposed to maybe physically makes a lot of sense. Yeah. The next question: how are you diagnosed with Tourette syndrome?
How? When I was younger, I was diagnosed with clinical depression, CD, and social anxiety disorder. I had tics and everything, but it wasn't diagnosed until I was older when it became severe, and that's when I found out that the recipe for Tourette syndrome is actually OCD, depression, social anxiety, social anxiety disorder. So it wasn't until I was older that I was diagnosed because it was around when I was younger, and then it went away, and I would have it very mildly, or mild tics. And then when I got older, due to being under a lot of stress, which I didn't know that could re-trigger it, take it out of it being dormant, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And they thought I was having a stroke or something, so I ended up going to the emergency room, and then I saw a neurologist and then another doctor, and they said that your Tourette's came back from when you were younger, and it's just so yes, I've just been dealing with them ever since.
So it was something that you figured out on your own early on, or was it something
when
at
I
that
was
point when the doctor told you?
When I was younger, I just thought it was a weird habit that I did.
Yeah,
like
not
where
necessarily
I'd
something that was
have
wrong
to
with
fold
you.
my ear.
Yeah, I mean, it happens with everybody. Yeah.
Do weird breathing, or gestures with my face, or stuff like that, or rolling my eyes. Just thought it was a weird thing that I just did, like a habit. It wasn't because it wasn't really affecting a lot of things. It was just kind of like that was my own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And due to the environment I grew up in and having this terrifying father to try to be around, I pretty much stayed away and just kept everything. And my mother noticed it, and then it kind of went away, where I just had mild ones into my teen years, and then it came back severely after that, due to stress and yeah. Did I answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
With good detail, too.
Yeah, nice. Okay.
With very good detail. So that kind of ties into the next question of Sonia's. How are you doing right now with your Tourette?
I was taking 3 pills a day, and now I'm down to 1. And
for how many years?
The 3 came back probably a year and a half ago. Before that, I was taking other meds, but not 3. They put me on ORAP, which I guess they used for schizophrenia in Europe or something. It's supposed to help with the dopamine levels in your brain, something like that, help the movement stuff. I'm doing okay. I seem a lot better. I still have my tic attacks sometimes after I get up, and after I have like my night terrors. I still have my night terrors, but I'm not as bad as like I was before. But so I'm doing okay. I guess doing the best I've been in a while. I guess.
Very good. It's very positive. Very Davis.
Positive. Yes, very Davis.
Very Davis. We got to catch that on, people. Davis is the new synonym for positive. So spread that around. Kind of goes into the next question here. What do you take currently for Tourette syndrome? You kind of mentioned that with the pills and whatever.
Yeah, it's ORAP, and then I take Klonopin for my anxiety, and it helps me sleep. And I also try to take something else, and I can't remember the name of it, but yeah.
Also, kind of answers the next question. But do you take anything for your anxiety, OCD, or clinical depression?
I used to take a bunch of different things for my clinical depression, but they made me such a zombie to where I felt really emotionless, if that's a word.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I took myself off of that because I accepted the fact that okay, if I'm depressed today and I'm sad and I really have no reason that I can think of, then I know that it's the chemical imbalance and that it's fine. And I just learn to cope with it. The anxiety, I take the Klonopin, and the Tourette's, I take the ORAP, but nothing like Seroquel, or not Seroquel. Seroquel, I think I used to take, or I don't take anything like Ritalin or anything like that. So,
well said. And finally, have you heard about tic thoughts?
I have. I know that Melissa at I drank the seawater. Yep, who's the whole reason I started doing this. She actually had a video on tic thoughts. I always used to think that it was like daydreaming, or I used to think it was like my OCD, where I would just think, like, I used to walk by people, and if I didn't know them, I would, in my head, I always 714 would be the word, that numbers that came in my head.
Just in your head?
Yeah.
Why 714?
I don't know. It's not. There's no
significance.
It's not July 14th. It's not Um,
714.
yeah, there's no tie-in. I have no idea why.
Interesting.
It's just weird.
For how long? That's
Since
what TikToks are, by the way. For
since I was little. The 714 came when I was like a little older, but I mean, I used to. It's just weird. I don't know.
That's what TikToks are. I was gonna ask you that.
They're like the same fit, like physically how I have my how I have my my talking about it makes them happen. How I physically have them or verbally, you do have them mentally.
Yeah.
So where it's kind of like something that it just has to happen.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that existed until I was talking to my neurologist and I also saw Melissa did a video on it from I Drink the Seawater, so I was just like, holy crap. So yeah, they're just pretty much like mental tics. If that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, with an example like the 714 thing, it kind of puts it in perspective a little bit.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't get it.
Never heard of that before. That's interesting.
Yeah, like if I'm at work, where we work.
Yep.
At a certain place, if a customer's going by, like same thing happens.
Yeah.
And I turn my head, like I have to turn my head, and it does it. And
the same number, 714.
Yeah, and
really?
and Courtney.
Yep.
She's the one who pointed it out to me. She was like, every time someone walks by, I'm just like, yeah, I don't know that I'm doing it. It's just subconscious.
What do you look away?
I look away, and then in my head, I'm also thinking that. But if it's somebody like if you walked by at work, I don't think that or whatever. It's
just someone that you don't know. Interesting. Or not familiar with or comfortable with, I guess, maybe. Maybe that's the
I don't know.
The similarity or something, but those are the questions.
Nice.
Sorry, I got a little chocolate on there for my frappe from McDonald's.
Bastard.
Check it out, they're great shit, by the way. $1.99, baby.
Oreo is better.
Oreo is good. Mocha is pretty good too.
Okay, so on to the questions I have for Graham with his specialty. Even though I've been into it a lot longer.
What was
that? Nothing. Okay, so in your opinion, the top 5 guys to never hold the WWE Championship that should have.
That's a great question. That's one of those. Is this the question that you were talking to me about a couple days ago? That you looked at my articles and all of them? Remember you said a couple days ago when we were talking at work, you were like, I looked through your articles, I never saw you write about this or whatever.
Yeah, did you?
This one, I don't think I've ever done.
Yeah.
I've thought about it before, but I've never, I don't think I've ever gone down. 3, 4, 5. Okay. Let's see. Obviously, number 1 to me would be Roddy Piper. Would have to be. 2.
He almost did, didn't he?
He almost did at WrestleMania. Him and Hogan almost happened at WrestleMania 1, but it didn't. They turned into a tag team match with T and.
But it didn't also almost happen in WCW too, when him and Hogan.
Oh yeah, when they feuded up the world title. I don't think he ever held the WCW title. I don't think so.
No.
I don't think he was ever world champion anywhere. But yeah, Roddy Piper easily. 2, I would have to say Ted DiBiase, $1 Million Man.
No, he held it.
Never officially. Andre the Giant did.
No.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, no, it's not. It's not in the record books.
He lost it to.
It's not in the record books. He beat Hogan for it in like the whole controversy, and then he handed it to Andre. So if you check the record books, Ted DiBiase has never before been a WWE champion. Oh man, to me, I might save that person for last because that's a good one, and it's my own like personal liking to the person. But I think he deserves to be in the list. But in the meantime, man, I'm thinking of all the people like from like the '80s because I feel like nowadays everyone gets a shot with a title.
Think of the '90s though too.
'90s too. You probably have someone in mind that I'm not thinking of, right?
Yeah, I have a couple.
Shit. I want to say Mr. Perfect. I don't know. Yeah, put him on the list anyway. I'm sure there's better ones, and you can fill me in. Oh, man. I'll just give it to you now. I think who deserves to be on this list? William Regal. Honestly, I think he could have been WWE champion.
Really?
I think he could have been world champion, especially in 2008 when he was on the verge, when he was like at his best as Raw GM.
Was that before his nose bled on Raw and they sent him away for his drug problem? You know about that, right?
No.
He
I mean, I know
came
he
in
got
as the working man.
Yeah.
He was William Regal, the
Oh,
working
yeah,
man.
no, I'm real man's man.
Real man's man.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
he was wrestling, and nobody did anything, and his nose just started bleeding.
Really?
Because he had a coke problem, and then he was gone the next day.
I know he had drug problems, yeah. Wow, I did not know that. Did not know that story.
Yeah, I watched it live, and I was
really?
like, why is his nose bleeding? And then he was off TV for like months because they went to rehab.
Jeez. Well, you learn something new every day. But those are all the names that I got. What do you got?
One more. There's a brother. I know. There's a brother.
I don't know why I didn't say this one. Owen Hart, obviously. Owen Hart's got to be. He's probably number one. Other than that, he's probably like number two behind Piper. But Owen Hart, easily.
That's funny.
Who else?
Scott Hall.
Scott Hall, easily. He's another good one.
Jake the Snake.
Oh, Jake the Snake.
Yeah.
He never held the championship, period.
No.
I think it's too soon to say someone like Bray Wyatt, so I won't say him.
I had one more.
Scott.
It wasn't Big Boss Man.
No, I mean he could be on that list. I wouldn't put him too high up there though.
Because I had 5 in my head too. Crap, that's gonna bug me.
Oh man, British Bulldog maybe.
Bulldog.
I put the Bulldog on there. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a good one. Rick Rude, I might put on there too.
No, it was Rude. Yeah, it was Rude.
All those guys, I feel like could have been world champion at some point.
They were. Just pissed me off that Razor. They never.
Yeah, he was a glorified mid card guy when he was there. Unfortunately, when he came back, he was a fuck up.
All right, so this counts with the championship they have now to take the world out of there. You can add the world in there if you want, whatever.
Okay.
But not favorite, but best champion to date, you think?
Of all time.
To date, yeah. In your opinion.
Favorite or best?
Best.
Best. Like I was going to say, two very different things.
Yes.
Best, I think you got to go. I mean, you could say a bunch of different things. I think best to a lot of people could mean who sold the most amount of tickets.
Overall, everything, just best.
Yeah, like who had the greatest matches. I would have to say, honestly, and to me, it's not like just because he's my favorite champion of all time, but I think you can't go with anyone else but Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Really?
I think the time that he was on top and champion for throughout 98 to 2001, no one was hotter than him, so I'd have to go with Austin. I mean, Hogan, you could say, San Martino, but that's when the company was at its hottest in addition to when Austin was on top. But I know Punk would be my favorite WWE champion of all time, but that's just because I've only been watching for only 8 years, so.
I'd say HBK.
Oh, you know, he was another good one, too. He was another good one, too.
HBK. Okay, the next question is, who's your favorite world champion to date?
CM Punk.
Mine too.
CM Punk.
Yeah. All right.
Greatest world champion of the last 10 years. And holding the title for 15 times, John Cena, does not count.
That means he lost it 14 times.
Mm-hmm.
Best intercontinental champion to date.
Of all time? This is a very popular question, and I feel like it varies from person to person. The popular answer... Honky Tonk Man's up there. I think it goes between these two people. Honky Tonk Man held it for a year and a half, and he played his role very well as a heel in that he held the championship for like a year and a half, and he cheated in every title defense. He held on to it for as long as he could. And then when he finally lost it, it meant something to the Warrior. With that being said, though, beyond that title reign, he went nowhere. Like he was done in the water at that point. So I would say, because this guy held the championship so many times, had a lot of great matches, a lot of great feuds, and he's a multi-time world champion. Got to go with Chris Jericho. Jericho. I mean, there's a couple other really good ones, like Scott Hall I would put high up on the list, if not number one.
Razor's my choice.
Razor, I would say. I cannot argue that.
Okay, I'll make this your last question. That way it can save the other two for Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Your favorite Intercontinental Champion of all time.
That's good.
Oh no, I'm sorry. The best Intercontinental I would say was Brett.
Can't argue there either.
And then my favorite would be Razor.
Oh, okay. Those are two really good ones too, because they had a lot of great matches during the time they weren't champions. So can't argue there. I would say favorite IC champion.
Mm-hmm.
Razor was great. I'm trying to think. It's hard to say.
Don't dare say The Miz.
Well, it's hard to say like anyone beyond when I started watching wrestling is my favorite because I wasn't a
That's
fan.
true.
You know what I mean? It's hard to say
That's
like
true.
Scott Hall, but in the time that I've been a fan though, since 08, my favorite IC champion of all time. That's a really good one. Just because the title belt in the 8 years that I've been a fan has largely meant nothing. Honestly, like I tell people this all the time, that everyone who has held that championship has stayed at that level. Like a Wade Barrett, like back when you were a fan, and still are a fan, obviously, but during the time of a Bret Hart and a Razor Ramon, I know Scott Hall was never world champion, but they would take that title and they would go to the next level. Like it was a stepping stone to the WWE title. Ask Austin, ask Brock, ask Triple H. It hasn't been like that in like 15 years, ever since like Randy Orton held it. But anyway, in the time that I've been a fan, my favorite IC champion, Cody Rhodes did pretty good with it for a while. Man, there's been so many like interchangeable and like forgettable IC champions. It's really hard to say one. God damn it, I really don't know. That's a great question. Just because,
favorite?
I'll just say this just because he's the first name that comes to mind, and I loved his reign as champion because he was so fucking entertaining. Kevin Owens, gotta go KO. I mean, I know he's the most recent, but everyone beyond that did nothing for me as champion.
I don't know why I'm writing him down.
Well, just in case, keep it with the
I have
records.
no idea why I'm writing down. All right. Well, I appreciate you answering all my questions.
Thank you for having me on once again.
Yep. If you guys have any questions for myself or for Graham, please send them in. You can catch Graham's channel at
GrahamGSMMatthews.
What do you cover?
I cover pro wrestling pretty much. I was going to say the specifics, but just largely sports entertainment, pro wrestling, entertaining pro wrestling, whatever the hell you want to call it. That's what I cover.
Pro wrestling.
Pro wrestling. Road to 1K, baby. Check it out.
And I'll put his channel linked. Hopefully he's going to show me how to put it linked in the bottom of the video.
On the show.
Until then, I hope you guys are all well, and I'll talk to you later.
Peace.
Bye.